Hi everybody, welcome to EA Zoom meetings. My name is Kirsty McIntosh. I'm very happy to be here today. I'm sorry you can't see my face and you may be looking at a green matrix type screen, but my computer's not working at the moment very well. So I am a criminal astrologer, or a forensic astrologer is another way to say it, but basically what I spend most of my time doing at the moment is looking for missing people. So please tell me if you can't hear me properly, because I'm quite concerned that my speaker thing isn't working. So let me know if you can't hear me, please.
Kirsty, you're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I've been doing this now roughly for, well, I'm a professional astrologer with the Federation of Australian Astrologers, a QA, and I became professional in about 1998. But I've been doing criminal astrology for probably about 15 years, I suppose now. And that actually stemmed from a passion that I had many, many years ago, and that was a bit of a strange passion, I suppose, but looking into psychopathy and sociopathic behaviour in astrology. So I did that for many years, did a lot of research, and found many patterns that would show particular things about psychopathic type of people. Anyway, that led me onto Facebook as time went on, and I was actually asked by now I can mention this, so please don't freak out anybody, but I was asked by a lady from Arkansas to look into her nephew's death. And I came to find out quite quickly that it was actually a very well-known case. It was the case of the West Memphis 3, which I'm sure you have probably heard about in some capacity. So I actually became the astrologer for both sides of the families in the West Memphis 3 case. Just quickly, that is where 3 young boys were murdered in West Memphis, Arkansas, and then 3 teenage boys went to prison. They shouldn't have gone to prison. They were falsely convicted, sent to prison. So I ended up doing astrology charts for the family of the boys that were murdered and also the boys that were put in prison. So then that led me to making a page that really just focused on helping out people that needed problems. And unfortunately, as you can hear, I live in Australia, but in America, there's just too many murders. And as I put the page up, more and more people started coming on. I have about 700 people in my group now. And predominantly at the moment, I just get asked to look for missing children. So I just wanted to give a little rundown, because I know it's not the most common of things to do with astrology. I know that there is a handful of us that do this. I think there is probably 5 that I know of that actually look into criminal astrology and do what I do as well. And it has proven itself over and over again to work. So what I'm going to do today is just run through it. This takes a long time to understand criminal astrology. I'm not going to be able to do it in one session, but I'd like to run through as much as I can. I'm going to use an example, and the example is actually an ongoing investigation at the moment in Missouri, Kansas. And I would like to just say that I do have permission from family to talk about this. I was asked to actually look into this. So, excuse me, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so I apologise if I cough every now and then. So basically, I was asked by the parents of a missing girl. She went missing in September of last year, and her name is Jessica Runyons. And so Jessica's family came to me and asked me whether I would help them search. They had been searching for Jessica, who had gone missing in September, that entire time, and I was asked in February to join in. So that's the charts that we'll be looking at. So if we could just go to the first page, I'll move along to the method. Okay, so many people ask me what branch of astrology this comes under. I like to think that perhaps it's a new type of astrology, and it sort of involves so many things. I can't say it's a mundane astrology, really, because it's not based on world events. It's more likely to be classed as event astrology. But basically what I do is I set up a chart for an emergency services phone call. So I've put 911 here on the screen because I predominantly work with Americans and use 911 calls as the time and the place to set up these charts. So when a person goes missing, for example, there's many different ways we could use this astrology, but this one particular way, if a person goes missing, usually there's a 911 call made for that person. So then I make a chart for that 911 call. If there's no 911 call, but there is a last sighting of that person, then I will make a chart called a last seen chart. Sorry, I just have to have coffee as well while I'm talking. Usually what happens when getting into these cases is that many charts get made. It starts with the 911. Then usually when I find more information, which I do, make sure I find evidence and specific times. As I've said, it's usually come from the family, so I'm fortunate in that respect that I can get accurate times and birth times. Sometimes, even though I erect the 911 charts, the last seen charts, natal charts and progressions, everything, it still doesn't give us a complete answer. So then a horary can become necessary, and that can show us directions as well. Something that I did want to mention is that I actually have a YouTube channel, and I have been hearing from a few people in the world that I am being a fatalist and that this is fatalist astrology, and I don't believe it is. I don't adhere to the fact that you can look at a person's natal chart and just see that they're a killer, and it takes far more than that. So there's no real benefit to doing astrology that's fatalist like that, because it's just something that comes on board and makes you feel worse. Doing this sort of thing, actually, I take it on board. My health does suffer at times. So it's a difficult area to work with, but I find it very, it gives a little bit of resolution to family. Sometimes people just go missing and they never come back. And if they've got some other hope, then I'd like to be able to give them that hope. And it's shown over and over again that this method that I'm using and that a couple of other people are using actually works. So I think it's a brilliant thing. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so rulerships for these charts is probably the hardest thing, actually. You have to find the correct ruler for the persons, and events that are going on at that time. So the general rule of thumb is the first house, the ascendant, represents the victim, or the person missing. And when I erect a last seen chart or a 911 chart, they are the ascendant and then co-ruled by the moon, as you would do in horary or other astrology. If it is a child that's missing and the child is under the care of their parents, like a very small child, under the age of 5 roughly, then I'll look to the 5th house cusp as well. And when I'm looking at the cusps, I'm looking at the rulers of the cusps and interactions between those, but I'll explain that a bit further down the track. The suspect or the perpetrator of said abduction, it's usually an abduction that occurs with missing people. If it's not, then that does show in the chart as well. But the 7th house is represented as the perpetrator. As you know, it's the house of open enemies. And at that very time of a 911 chart or a last seen chart, that is the open enemy in that person's face, basically. So we wouldn't use the 12th house as a hidden enemy, although you would think that you possibly could use the 12th house because we can't see what's going on. But obviously the person in question can see what's going on, and that is their open enemy. So I use the 7th house for the suspect. What I have found is that when I erect these charts, the ruler of the ascendant, which is the victim, and the ruler of the descendant, which is the suspect, the majority of the time form a very strong aspect between each other. And then that shows me that the whole situation is exactly how it appears to be. That the victim has in fact met up with the said perpetrator, 1st and the 7th house rulers, and they're aspecting each other. I'll show you that as we go further as well. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so planets in the crime chart, they can show us so many different things. Basically, they show us, so the ruler of the ascendant and the 7th, those planets can show us what the person, like for the 7th house, what the person looks like. Sorry, I just flipped. I was talking about houses then, but I'm still talking about planets. Excuse me. I think we may have mixed some things around on here, Linda. There's something that's a bit...
Sorry, I accidentally went to the next slide, but you're on planets in the crime chart right now.
Oh, okay, yep, we flicked forward and back. Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay, sorry. Okay, so the planets show us so many things. It shows us the people involved, what the people look like that are involved. It shows so many things, and I'll show you that afterwards. But a quick rundown is generally if we're seeing Mars in a crime chart, it indicates, as it does with other forms of astrology, something that's happened quickly in the heat of the moment. It can indicate that there was weapons used in a particular instance. Guns, knives, anything made of metal, as you know, all those things Mars. Now Pluto in these charts do show often points of trouble for these people. That's when most people in my group start to freak out and think, what does that mean because I've got Pluto in so-and-so house that I'm going to die or get murdered or something? No, it doesn't. It does not mean that at all. It only seems to show like this in these event charts. Pluto, I love Pluto personally. I think it's a fantastic planet. It shows us so much stuff. It doesn't represent death, we know that. But in these charts, it does really quite often point to well, often we see it in the 8th house when a death has occurred. So Neptune can indicate the same sort of things we all know for the rulers with these planets. Neptune can indicate poisoning, drowning, taking photos of people against their will, which I'm trying to be diplomatic about this, but it's related to sexual deviance and pornography and things like that. we can see some delusional thinking if there's any relationship to Mercury, Gemini, or the third house. There's a couple of charts that I have done where there's been such a prominent Neptune, Mercury, third, ninth house, that it's quite clear that I wish I could show you so many more cases, but religious zealots can have Neptune in a position if, you know, you've got a person that is that way inclined. Okay, Uranus can show a sudden, I really sound like I'm being stereotypical, but Uranus can show sudden events and sudden situations that occur at the time. It can show death suddenly as well. Okay, Venus can show us injuries to the neck and throat, strangulation, things like that. And then I have the point of 26 Taurus, which is caput algol, and then that shows quite often if there's any major trauma to the head. So all the planets can describe the way in which a person has fallen foul to somebody. Okay, so I'll keep moving. Next slide, please. Okay, so the houses in a crime chart, the angles are very important in crime charts. They are the first, the fourth, the seventh, and the 10th are so important. As I said, the first house represents the victim. The seventh house is the perpetrator. But all the other houses have a role as well. The second house, now these are things that I have seen working in the past. I haven't just sort of grabbed them out of thin air. They have worked, they have shown to be true. So the second house, as we know, is money and values, etc. That when planets are positioned there, it can show us when there's money involved in a particular situation, selling children, all different horrible scenarios like that. The third house is, as we know, short distances, traveling short distances in cars, communication problems, and in criminal astrology, the third house and Gemini and Mercury always shows two people. It's just, it sounds very generic, but it does, it always does. Okay, the fourth house in the last scene or the 911 chart is the end of the matter. So the fourth house shows us the result, basically, what's happened at the very end of the situation. The fifth house can show us parties and drinking, having fun, being at a hotel, a bar, a club, all those things associated with the fifth house. The sixth house is routine, and something that I've noticed very often is that when a person has been watched by somebody, the ruler of the seventh house sits in the sixth house, and that happens often. So when somebody is watching somebody else, stalking, or has their eye on them to take them, we often see the seventh house ruler in the sixth house. Okay, the eighth house, like I said, the seventh house is the perpetrator. The planets in the seventh house also show us indications of what the perpetrator may look like as well, by the way. The eighth house, as we know, is the eighth house of death, and it does actually come up a lot in these charts, and it represents death. It's quite clear it does when the ruling planet of either the first house or the moon or anything associated with the victim is in the eighth house. It very often shows that that person has deceased. And then also it shows us other eighth house things as insurance and other people's money. As we know, crimes happen because of things like that. So we need to look there sometimes. Okay, the ninth house is the religious house, far away distances, etc. The 10th house is, excuse me, it's a few things. I mean, it's how the world sort of sees it. Quite often when a case becomes, excuse me, a case becomes high profile, and now my throat's going to give way. 1 second, sorry. When a case becomes high profile, we often see a couple of planets sitting in the 10th house. And that's with most things with astrology. I know we see things in the 10th house like that. But also the 10th house shows me where the police are in regard to this situation as well, because Capricorn and the 10th house naturally rules authority, police, law enforcement, etc. So that can show me something to do with the police as well. Okay, the 11th house is crimes of humanity, friends that are involved in crimes. I could go on for such a long time giving you examples of each house and crimes that fit into each house, but it would just go forever, so I won't. The 12th house is then the hidden aspects of the situation, things that we need to look for a little deeper. Okay, can we have the next slide, please? Okay, excuse me. So people in the crime chart, all the planets represent people very clearly, actually, in these charts. Mercury, when we see Mercury, it can show a younger person. As we know, Mercury is the younger, under 30 usually, or way under 30. It shows brothers and sisters, siblings, cousins, and like I said before, two people. I see two people associated with Mercury every time I look at these charts, if Mercury is involved. And that's usually if it's in the 7th house. Excuse me 1 second, I have to cough. Sorry about that. Okay, Venus shows women, and if feminine signs as well can show that women are involved. Mars shows a violent person, or somebody that is angry at the time. As I've written here, if Aries is on the 7th house cusp, then Mars rules that person, the perpetrator, and then that perpetrator acted out of anger. And it does show like that. Like I keep saying this, it sounds stereotypical, but it really does show itself to be like this. Okay, Jupiter, we have teachers, clergymen, people that work at the church, and also people that are full of themselves tend to be shown by Jupiter in these charts. Okay, Saturn is the older male and authority, the police, judges, father, grandfather, anybody in authority, but quite often in these charts just represents an older male. And usually I see it actually that it shows grandfathers or stepfathers as well. And also that this, as we know with Saturn and the Sun is the male as well, and it's an older male, and that also can show fathers and stepfathers and older males as well. So we've got sort of two areas to look for there. And the Moon can show us the mother and the sister, aunties, but also can show us reasoning as to what happened, which I'll explain again next when we look at the charts. So next page, please. Okay, so this is the last seen chart for Jessica Runyons. So she was leaving a party at 11:30 on the 8th of September 2016, just last year. And she left the party with a friend of hers. It was a male friend. Now, I'm not going to mention his name. This case is actually it's about to go to court in October. So I do not want to mention the person's name because he is definitely the person that did something to Jessica, and I don't want to give any ammunition for lawyers to say that, get him off. But anyway, so Jessica was seen leaving this party at 11:30. This is in Missouri, Kansas. She left the party in a car with this male friend of hers, and she was never seen again. Now, when I started looking, when I was asked to look for Jessica, it was February of this year, so she'd been missing for a while. And the families, her mother and father had actually split up, but they were both searching separately, and they had combed so much of Kansas and Cass County, which is the area where this was, to try and find Jessica. As it turns out, 2 days after this day, her car was found burnt down the road, and the person that burnt it was actually the person that was with her leaving the party. So he was arrested, and in prison he sits for setting fire to her car. Okay, so this chart was set up for 11:30, so the last time that she was seen. And you'll notice that we've got 12 degrees of Gemini on the ascendant. So Mercury represents Jessica in this instance. And then we have Sagittarius on the 7th house, obviously being the opposite of Gemini. So the ruler of the 7th is Jupiter. And then if we go down and have a look at where Mercury and Jupiter are, we'll see that they're both conjunct in the 5th house. So there we have the ruler of the ascendant and the ruler of the descendant making a nice conjunction there in the house of parties, the 5th house. They left the party at this point in time, and that shows me that they did. They were together, Mercury and Jupiter, right there together in the 5th house. They were having fun at that time when they left, which apparently they were in fairly good spirits when they did leave. Okay, now in the 7th house here we have the moon in Sagittarius and Mars in Sagittarius as well, and they're conjunct. And as you can see, we've got a big grand square. I call it a grand square. I think you guys may call it a grand cross, between the moon, Saturn, the moon, Neptune, the ascendant, and then the sun down in the 4th house. So the 7th house there shows me, because I know the situation of what occurred. So one thing I do want to say is there's no point in ever going into these things blind. I get some people asking me to look at charts, and they will give me no information whatsoever about what happened. I feel that there's no real need to prove that this works, so I like to know the information. I want to know the evidence. I want to know exactly what happened right up until 11:30. I want to know what the police know. I'm not just going to pull a chart up and have a guess. So everything that I sort of know goes along with what the police have found out, evidence-wise as well. So I know at the time when they were leaving this party together that the male involved was actually really quite intoxicated. And we can see that with Neptune up there in the 10th house in that grand cross. Now, when they left, they actually left in Jessica's car, in her vehicle, but this person decided that he wanted to drive instead and decided to ask Jessica to jump out of the driver's seat. He jumped in, he was drunk, and he smashed a car and had to get out and get into the passenger seat. So that happened sort of at about 11:35, 11:40. Excuse me. But at this time, Jessica was just, she was sitting in the passenger seat, swapped over to the driver's seat, and then took off. But apparently at the party, just before they left, the person that was with Jessica had started to get quite upset and rowdy. Obviously, he'd been drinking a fair bit, and he started to get a little bit emotional and wanted to talk about things with Jessica. And I'll wait a little minute and I'll tell you a bit more about that in a second. Okay, so what I do notice in here, and what you'll notice as we look through the other charts as well, is the duality in these charts. So we've got a dual sign on the ascendant there, Gemini, with Mercury ruling. Can we go to the next chart, please? Okay, this is just the same chart but up close. I wasn't sure if everyone would be able to see it okay, so I just wanted you to have a good look at these numbers here. So yeah, we've got 12 degrees Gemini, 12 degrees of Saggy. The closest aspect to the ascendant is Venus in Libra at 12 degrees. So we've got another double sign there. And just note the moon in Sagittarius there at 13 degrees. And can we go to the next page, please? Okay. Actually, can we please go to the next page? And then I think we may have to go back. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to do was to find out Jessica's birth time and do a natal chart. And if you have a look at this chart, you'll see that the house cusps are exactly the same. 12 degrees Gemini rising, 12 degrees Sagittarius descendant, and lo and behold, her moon is in Sagittarius in the 7th house. It's in the same spot. So could we flick back again, please, Linda? Sorry. So we'll see if that's brilliant. So if we look at the house cusps here, we can see the IC and the MC are 18 degrees Leo and 18 degrees Aquarius. And if you just have a little look at all these houses and sort of note, you know, where the angles are. If we could flip forward 2 more pages, please. Sorry.
This one?
Next one, please. Okay, so it's very close, except the IC and the MC is just not even a degree out at 19, 15, Leo and Aquarius. So I was amazed when I pulled up this chart, to be honest. I actually have never seen a chart that matches so well with a missing chart. Now, this girl is older, you know, these charts are so far apart, it's not funny. The chances of the houses being virtually the same are pretty remote. But anyway, they are. So what stands out to me when I do these sorts of things are the numbers, the degrees. And the number 12 and its double signs, 12 Gemini, and the ruler of obviously Jessica's natal chart is Mercury as well, sitting at 29 degrees there too. And then a Sag moon as well. It's so close. So these double signs are just everywhere again. I'm just, at this point, I started to question what was going on. Like, I thought, there's 2 people involved in this. I think 2 people know about it. Now, what happened at this point in time was I was told by the family that Jessica wasn't the first person to disappear by this same man. 10 years prior, another young lady, her name's Kara Kopetsky, had vanished as well after being seen with this same man. So I actually found this out in the middle of doing this case. And then I just thought, that's just unbelievable. It's showing us clearly that there's 2 people involved in this, very clearly. So I wanted to have a look at Kara's chart. So I think if we go to the next page, I'm hoping that's going to be there, Linda. It is. This is the last seen chart for Kara Kopetsky. And she vanished at 5:30. The 911 call was made at 5:30 on the 4th of May in 2007. And she was last seen at high school on CCTV, actually. So I've got 2 times, but I'm using the 911 call for this one. And if we look at the ascendant, we can see 12 degrees again of Libra. We've got another double sign there. So then I look to the ruler of the ascendant for Kara here, and that is Venus in Gemini. So it's, again, there's two. And right at this point, the minute that I saw Venus in Gemini there in the 9th house, and I feel that being in the 9th house is quite representative of when she was last seen, being in high school. I knew that these girls were together. It just made complete sense to me that the girls had been obviously taken and hurt by this same man, and that they were together. That could have been intuition as well, and it was a bit of intuition as well. I just really felt as though that they were going to find the girls together. Now, the girls didn't know each other at all. Their only the only thing they did have in common was this man that they were both last seen with. Excuse me. Okay, so without reading all of the charts, I wish I could, I'd love to, but it would take forever. Let's have a look at this. By the way, sorry, and let's have a look at the last seen moon for Kara Kopetsky, 12 degrees of Sagittarius. So there's so many things that are just repetitive in these charts. All of the charts have a Sagittarius moon between 12 and 17 degrees. They all have 12-degree ascendants and descendants. They all have pivotal Venus and Mercury. Excuse me. Okay. Linda, I'm sorry. Can we please go back? I think it's 2 pages now. Or maybe 1. No. Yes, this is it. Thank you. Okay, so I hope everyone can keep up with me. I know this can be a little confusing. So the next thing that I do then is map these things, actually grab out. I used to use Google Maps. I used to do astrocartography actually, but there's a new program now that I recommend if anybody is interested in this type of thing looking at, and it's called Scribble Maps, and it is fantastic. So what I do is I turn the degrees, or the degrees that I'm interested in, into whole signs. So the 12-degree Gemini ascendant becomes 72 degrees on a map, which I will show you in a couple of slides' time as well. I think, Linda, we're going to have to swap and change a little bit now. Okay. So I'm trying to figure out which slide I need to go to next to explain this. Okay, I'll just run through these. So 12 degrees Saggy, which is the descendant, is 252 degrees, and that's usually, it shows us where the person of interest comes from, where they live. It literally points to the direction of the people. Okay, excuse me. The 4th house, looks like I didn't actually turn it into whole degrees there, but the 4th house is 138 degrees. The 10th house, that's 318 degrees. The one I'm interested in showing you right now, though, is Mercury, and that, as you can see in the chart, sits at 24 Virgo, and that is the ruler of Jessica when she was last seen. So the ruler of Jessica is Mercury. Now, as we know, as I said, Jessica was in her car at the last time she was found, and they found her car on fire a couple of days later. So could we please go forward to the first map, Linda? I think it's 3 slides away. There we go. Yes, thank you. Okay. I wish I could show you the whole mapping system, but I actually can't because it's just there's not enough room, and I can't do it on a still slide. But where Jessica's car was found was exactly at 24 Virgo, or in the whole signs. As I said, 174 degrees on the map from the last place she was seen, and that is exactly to the very place that her car was burnt. It literally goes from the last place she was seen to her car. So Mercury shows that's where her car was. It's as clear as that. Can we please go? I'm so sorry, Linda. Can we please go back 3 again? Oh, that's the one. Perfect. Okay, so when I do measurements and turn the planets into whole degrees like this, in order to get directions, we also need a radius to look as well. Now, usually you start quite close and you go out. So I would start exactly where she was last seen. So I had an address. That's where I pinned it on the map. And then the very first mileage I went out, and I'm actually Australian and I work in kilometres, but I work better in mileage for some reason, and this seems to work better in mileage. So I went out in increments of 3 miles, 5 miles, 9 miles, literally just using the houses. And then 12 miles at the furthest point, because that's the ascendant and the descendant. So I just wanted to grab those numbers and see what was going on. So I started drawing those out. And sorry, I'm so sorry, Linda, but we're going to have to go forward a couple of slides again. And one more, please. Okay. Here's a more extended version of the map. So if you can't quite see it, but very close to where it says 12 Gemini and Scorpio there's a small circle. Then you'll see there's a 9-mile radius. The 37-mile was actually is a distance between where Kara was and where Jessica was. So just ignore that. 37 miles at the moment. Okay, so this area here where I've got empty leg of both charts, this was actually the first place that I wanted the family to search, and they asked me, where can we search? So the first thing that popped up to me was 12 degrees Gemini. It was just so clear that 12 degrees Gemini was, so repetitive that I thought it was very important that they look there. That actually led to this area, Longview Lake. And as it turned out, the family had planned on going to Longview Lake anyway. So this just gave them a bit of a heads up and they went quicker. Excuse me. They put out flyers and everything, and many people went looking and went through that whole lake, but sadly didn't find the girls. So the very next place that I was going to suggest to look, this was actually in the very beginning of April by this point. Is there one more map, Linda, please? Okay, yeah, that's better. Okay, so there's a clearer shot of the map. That's the area. As I was going from that 12 Gemini point, I should explain as well, when you're looking for somebody, obviously you're not going to just find them at the radius point and where the lines intersect. It just doesn't quite work like that. So how I would do it is, and how I've always done it, is you start at the very, very closest point where that little blue balloon is there and work your way out. So the next line was going to be 12 degrees of Libra, Venus. I wanted to stick with those 12 degrees. And within 3 days of telling the family that, sadly, the girls were found. Both girls were found together at exactly 192 degrees, 12 degrees of Libra, where Venus is. And they were 9 miles out. So if I could just go back again, I'm sorry, just to the 2 last scene charts, please, Linda. I think it's 1 back. Sorry, a couple back. Yes, there we go. So as we can see, when we look at both of the charts, we've got the 12 Gemini, the 12 Libra, and if you recall, I pointed out at the start in Jessica's last scene chart, Venus sits at 12 degrees of Libra, and that is exactly where both girls were. Initially, what happened was, now I am not going to be gruesome, but I do have to say sort of what happened. Because Jessica had only been missing for 6 months and Cara had been missing for 10 years. So you could imagine the difference in rate of decomposition. Now, both girls were found. Jessica was identified immediately, but Cara couldn't be identified immediately. So poor Cara's family had to wait. And when I looked at all of this seemed to stem back from Jessica's chart. So I went back to Jessica's chart and looked at the 4th house, or the end of the matter, being Leo. And that has often shown me when we're going to see the end of the matter. And as it turned out, it was in Leo season. Just a month ago, we got the news that it, in fact, was Cara Kopetsky that was found with Jessica. And now the case can go forward. So this person that was last seen with both girls is in prison. Both girls have been found. They were at the position of 12 degrees Libra. And I think both charts showed all the way through how we can utilise this even further. In other cases, it's quite amazing. And I did want to use this case because it was the most recent one that I was doing. But I thought it's quite remarkable how both charts interact as well. As you'll see, Venus in Cara's last seen chart sits in the very first house of Jessica's last seen chart. So it's like she's right there with her. And it was odd, the 2 girls weren't considered to be together. But as we were getting more into this, both mums knew in their hearts that they were together. And I think it was such a relief, actually, to find that they were together in the end. Obviously, it doesn't offer closure, but it gives some sort of resolution. And can we, that could actually be it for those charts. Can we flick forward, please, Linda? Okay, yep, so I showed the car. Yeah, so, okay. So there's an example of how the charts work with one of my most recent cases. I'm actually working on about 5 cases at the moment. I always need help, so if anybody wants to learn criminal astrology, please, by all means, come and talk to me. I have too much work and it's very sad. But I'm getting more and more people asking me to help look for their family members, and there's just too many people missing. So, okay, what else have I written here? Now, I didn't go into the aspects and everything. I'm thinking that if it's okay with Linda and okay with everybody else, that perhaps I'll do a part 2 and go into it even more.
Yes.
There's just so much. It's very hard to cover this entire thing in one session, unfortunately, because, I'd love to have read every single one of those charts with all the aspects, but I just wanted to point out the major things, really. But yeah, part 2 would be brilliant, I think. So at the moment, I am working on the case of Libby and Abby in Delphi. Oh, Have we gone?
It's okay. It's okay. Carry on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the case I'm working on at the moment is Liberty German and Abigail Williams. I'm not sure if, I'm sure you probably know actually, it's quite a well-known case. They were killed in Delphi, Indiana. But instead, like, they were found. So instead of looking for those girls, obviously, I'm actually changing the role here a little and looking for the suspect. But as it turns out, just this morning, I got some news that a suspect has been found. So I'm hoping that that may be the end of this one, and that they found the murderer of Abby and Libby. That probably will be the case I will talk about in part 2, actually, because as I said, it's just finishing up literally today as I speak. They're, I believe, pressing charges on somebody at the moment. So yeah, that is that's what I do. Has that been long enough, Linda? I haven't even.
Yes,
It is.
we've
Yes,
got a few minutes. We can take a few questions if that's
I
okay.
would love questions. Absolutely.
My first question, well, my question is, where are you in these charts? You've got the perpetrator in the 7th, the victim in the 1st. What about you?
You know, I don't look at me. I don't see me. I don't put myself in it. It's actually something, I know that's strange because you do when you're doing horary and, you know, all the other types of astrology, but I don't put myself in there at all. It's completely from the family, you know.
Yeah, I understand, yes.
So yeah, I've never actually put myself in there, never found the need to, never really seen. You know, my chart actually has matched up with a lot of charts in terms of houses and angles and things when I'm working on them. So sometimes I'll actually there's another lady in my group as well that has the same thing. We work on cases, and the ones that seem to be very important and that we tend to go further with, we do have aspects between our charts and the last seen charts and the natal charts. So, you know, we do pop our charts in there on top of it and go, you know, how are we related to this? But I would actually put my entire chart over the top of it, not just me in that particular chart.
Wonderful. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
This is Sarah. That's fascinating. I was totally enthralled. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Wow. Maybe that's my Jupiter and Scorpio. I don't know, but what fascinating work. So
it is.
How did you even get started on this kind of work? I'm so fascinated.
Well, initially it was just research into the type of people that can do this sort of thing. And then I actually, okay, I have Libra rising, and I have been a part of the Innocence Project, various Innocence projects for a few years now, in America again, actually. And the first case, like I said in the beginning of the video, was actually the West Memphis case, and that came about through the Innocence Project. But yeah, it was just a direct person just asked me straight out, would you mind doing this? I thought, okay, I'll have a go. Yeah. And it went from there. So, but like I said,
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had been studying these sorts of things for many years before, but yeah, hadn't actually been asked like that. So it was very interesting.
Is it hard to get the birth data of the victims? Because I know that when a news story comes out, we get their last time seen, you know, kind of thing. But yep. That's a lot of digging, I would imagine, forensic.
Oh, it is. You know, this takes a lot of time. It's never a quick thing. That's the reason why I actually get involved with family. You know, I'm usually asked by the family, or someone tells them, and they'll know that I'm around, and then they'll ask me, because there's no point getting third-hand information. I want to go straight to the source and get the times. If we get wrong times with things like this, then we're just chasing our tails. So it can be hard, and at times I've had to say, look, I actually just can't go any further. I don't have times for some things, and you know, I can look at a horary perhaps and try, but then I'm not going to go and give information based just on a horary and some times that may be wrong. So it is hard. Some people don't understand the importance of the time, you know, especially when they're looking for their loved ones. That's probably the last thing that they care to think about, is looking for a birth certificate or anything like that. But I've managed to do it. Everybody has been very good in doing that, and I think when I have a good chat with them and explain how it works, then they understand how important it is and get that information. So yeah, it has to be very, very accurate.
Yeah, I can see why. Yeah. Very sensitive.
Yeah. Yes. I have found though that the people that I deal with, they're the most beautiful people, you know, as you would all know, being astrologers. We deal with so many different sorts of people, but I find that victims of crime are the nicest people in the world. They will do anything for you to help them. You know, I do cop a lot of flack from a lot of people on YouTube. I've got some videos on YouTube, by the way, if you wanted to watch. You know, saying that I'm just trying to get money out of this or something. I don't ever charge any money. I never would. This is purely for looking for people and getting some sort of resolution. So it can be difficult. I've faced attacks over the years for doing this, you know, from everything from, you know, you're a fatalist to how can you possibly do this to the family? But, you know, like I said, I've always been asked by family. So yeah, it's hard. You've got to be very diplomatic with the whole thing. But it turns out that I've made the most beautiful friends with the families of these of people. In fact, Jessica Runyons, the lady I was talking about, her auntie has now become a part of the astrology community, and you may know her. And I'll say who it is. Her name is Shelley Clam, and if you see her around, please say hello. She's such a beautiful lady, and that's Jessica's auntie. So usually I end up making friends with these people. I've made some lifelong friends out of this. It's been awful but wonderful at the same time.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing.
That's okay. Thank you for asking.
Okay, any more questions?
I have a question. Oh.
Hello.
Tashi, it's not working. Tashi, your voice is all distorted. Tashi, if you could type your question into the chat, because your voice is distorted at the moment. Thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
I have like one little question.
Hi. Yes.
Hi. Yes. Yes. My name's Lauren, and it's very interesting.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah. Thank you for being such a good soul and helping these poor desperate people. But I'm just imagining, like, how would you even Isn't it so difficult to communicate to them? Like when you find this information, like, is there a special way that you can do this that, you know, I don't know. I'm just saying
that doesn't hurt. Look, it is hard, but the truth to people that have got missing families or deceased family members, that's what they want. They actually, a lot of people ask that, and they say, you know, how can you talk to them? How can you even discuss any of this with them? But obviously you've got to be very diplomatic. I don't talk about gory things. You know, they know the details obviously more than I do, usually by the end of it. So I don't go into horrible things like that. But I have to say, everybody that I've worked for and alongside, they just want to know. They'll ask me, tell me anything that you know, please tell me. So it becomes not hard at all. It's actually become quite easy to discuss it with the family. They're very, all families are very open-minded when it comes to this, actually. I've never come across a problem at all. You know, I've never actually said to anybody, look, I think that your child is definitely dead and you're not going to find them and this is that, you know, like I wouldn't say anything horrible. It's a gradual process, and I can't actually see straight away, you know, that they're deceased or anything like that. You know, we can read the charts and we can look at everything and put it all together, but I'm not going to assume that I know exactly what happened. So it's just being diplomatic, really. I think me having a Libra rising, I tend to be good at doing that. It's just it's just being honest with them and treating them like humans, and that's what they don't get. The families of victims, I find they get treated like people walk on eggshells around them and don't want to talk about things, but they want to talk about their family. They want to know what happened. And like I said, I've made friends for, you know, over years now, and we still talk about the cases have been gone and their children have been gone for a long time, but we still discuss their kids and the cases. So, yeah, it's actually not hard, which sounds strange, I know.
That's like fascinating, and like the correlation of like the miles. And for me, it's like pretty similar. I took a course for medical astrology, and it's like you know, it's pretty similar for the Hore. But it's just so amazing, like that you could track a map like that. It's like mind blowing.
It is, oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it is. It's fascinating, and you would think that it would actually be a lot harder than just plotting the degrees of the particular ruler, you know, the ruling planet, but it's just showing itself more often to become quite simple. I think we tend to make things a little bit harder sometimes for ourselves. So yeah, it's simply turning degrees into miles has worked a few times. I do have a criminal and forensic astrology Facebook group with loads of maps and things, and a YouTube channel as well. So if you want to see more mapping, you can have a look on there too, and see how that works. And there'll be more and more going up, so hopefully it'll show, you know, exactly how I do it.
Okay, Kirsty, we have some feedback here from Tashi. She says, it's such good work. The grid of astrology proves itself over and over again. Congratulations and thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's lovely. It does. Yeah, I'm very excited and hope it does keep going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kirsty. That was so fascinating. I think it's one of the most interesting meetings we've had so far. Thank you from all of us.
Oh, thank you for having me, and hopefully I'll come back and do a part 2, and we'll do something else.
Definitely. I'll be scheduling you for that. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, Alice.
Thank you.